am Audrey, 30 years old, and nothing prepared me for watching my brother Derek slap my 6-year-old daughter Lily across the face at our family reunion. Worse was hearing my father Howard smirk. Well, she needed to learn some shame, while my mother Eleanor laughed along. They thought they were safe in their cruelty, but they forgot about the documentary microphone recording everything. Before I tell you how I turned my brother's life into a living hell, let me know where you're watching from, and subscribe if you believe children deserve protection, even from family. Growing up in the Thompson household meant understanding my place early on. I was the scapegoat, the one who could never do anything right, while my brother Derek was the golden child who could do no wrong. Our dynamic was established long before I had the words to describe it. My father, Howard, a successful corporate attorney, had specific expectations for his children. Derek met them perfectly. Athletic, academically gifted, and most importantly, willing to mirror our father's aggressive personality. I was more like my mother, Eleanor, in appearance, but not in personality. Where she was happy to enforce my father's rules and maintain the family hierarchy, I questioned things, which made me the family troublemaker. Audrey just doesn't understand how to behave properly, my mother would tell relatives at family gatherings, shaking her head with practiced disappointment. Not like our Derek. By 16, I had developed a protective shell. I learned to make myself invisible at home, keeping my head down and counting the days until I could escape. When I met Jason during my first year of college, he seemed like my ticket to freedom. He was kind, attentive, and most importantly, he really saw me in a way my family never had. We married when I was 20, far too young, but desperate for a family of my own. My parents attended our modest wedding with tight smiles and thinly veiled criticism about everything from my dress to our vows. Derek, already climbing the corporate ladder at 22, brought an expensive gift and a speech that sounded supportive but was laced with condescension. I never thought my little sister would find someone willing to take her on, he joked to uncomfortable laughter. Good luck, Jason. You'll need it. For a while I thought I had escaped. Jason and I settled into a small apartment, and I finished my degree in communications while working part-time. We weren't wealthy, but we were happy. When I became pregnant with Lily at 24, it felt like everything was finally falling into place. Lily arrived on a rainy Tuesday morning, 7 pounds 3 ounces of pure joy, with her father's blue eyes and my dark hair. Holding her, I made a silent promise that she would always know she was loved exactly as she was. She would never question her worth the way I had been forced to question mine. The first cracks in my marriage appeared when Lily was 3. Jason started working late, becoming distant. I found text messages from someone named Kara on his phone. When confronted, he denied it at first, then admitted to a 6-month affair with a coworker. We tried counseling, but his heart wasn't in it. By the time Lily turned 4, we were divorced. I didn't tell my family about the affair. I simply said we had grown apart, knowing they would somehow twist Jason's infidelity into my failure. My mother still managed to do exactly that. Men don't leave happy homes, Audrey, she said over the phone. What did you do to push him away? Single motherhood brought financial challenges I hadn't anticipated. My job as an administrative assistant at Madison Marketing barely covered our rent and childcare. Occasionally, I had to swallow my pride and ask my parents for help with unexpected expenses, a car repair, a medical bill, or school supplies for Lily. Each time, the money came with a lecture about responsibility and poor life choices. Meanwhile, Derek's life seemed perfect from the outside. He had become the youngest vice president at his financial firm. He married Natalie, a pediatrician from a wealthy family, and they lived in a sprawling house in the suburbs. We're focusing on our careers first, Derek would explain. But my parents still held them up as the example of success I should aspire to. If only you had applied yourself like your brother, my father would say whenever I visited. You could have had something to show for yourself. Despite everything, I wanted Lily to know her grandparents and her uncle. Children deserve family connections, I thought, even if I had to act as a buffer between them and the toxicity I had grown up with. So when the annual family reunion at my parents' lake house approached this summer, I decided to attend for the first time in 3 years. You sure about this? My friend Tara asked when I told her my plans. These people have never had your back. They're still family, I replied, though my stomach knotted at the thought. And Lily loves the lake. I can handle a weekend for her sake. Lily was ecstatic about the trip. At 6, she was a bundle of energy and curiosity, with a passion for singing that filled our small apartment at all hours. She had my stubbornness and a confidence I envied, unafraid to take up space in a way I had never been allowed to. Will Uncle Derek be there? And Grandma and Grandpa? She asked as we packed. And can I swim in the lake every day? Yes to all of it, I promised, ignoring the apprehension building in my chest. And Grandma said your cousins are coming too. I didn't mention that my brother-in-law, Paul, married to my father's sister, Linda, would be recording the reunion for a family documentary. My father had been insistent about documenting the Thompson family legacy, particularly Derek's achievements. As we drove toward the lake house, I rehearsed calming mantras in my head. Just 3 days. I can handle anything for 3 days. I'm not that scared little girl anymore. I'll protect Lily from experiencing what I did. Looking back, I realize I was trying to convince myself of something impossible. You can't protect someone from toxic dynamics while placing them directly in harm's way. Some lessons are learned the hardest way possible. The Thompson family lake house stood like a monument to old money and pretension, with its weathered cedar exterior and sprawling deck overlooking Lake Michigan. As I pulled our modest sedan into the circular driveway behind Derek's gleaming BMW and my parents' Mercedes, I felt the familiar shrinking sensation I always experienced around my family. We're here, Lily exclaimed, unbuckling her seat belt before I had fully parked. Her excitement was palpable, innocent of the undercurrents that made my shoulders tense. Can I go see the lake right away? Let's get settled first, I said, forcing a smile, and say hello to everyone. The front door swung open as we approached, revealing my mother in pressed linen pants and a cashmere sweater despite the summer heat. Her highlighted hair was perfectly styled, not a strand out of place. There you are, she said, her eyes scanning me critically before settling on Lily with more warmth. We were beginning to think you'd changed your mind. Traffic was heavy, I explained, accepting her stiff hug. It's good to see you, Mom. Inside, the great room buzzed with relatives arranging food and drinks. My father stood by the stone fireplace, deep in conversation with my uncle Robert. He glanced up, nodding in acknowledgement without pausing his discussion about stock options. Derek and Natalie emerged from the kitchen, his arm draped possessively around her shoulders. My brother had our father's build, tall and broad-shouldered, but his features were sharper, calculated. His smile never quite reached his eyes. Well, the prodigal sister returns, he announced loudly enough for everyone to hear. And with little Miss Lily. You've grown since I last saw you, kiddo. Lily, suddenly shy, pressed against my leg. Hello, Uncle Derek. Natalie stepped forward with a genuine smile. Unlike the rest of the family, she had always been kind to me, though in the carefully distant way of someone who recognized the family dynamic but wouldn't challenge it. It's lovely to see you both, she said, embracing me warmly. Lee, your cousins are down by the dock if you want to join them after you get settled. Mom, can I go? Lily asked, already bouncing with anticipation. After we take our bags to our room, I promised. Derek sipped his bourbon, eyeing me over the rim of his glass. Still working at that little marketing place. What is it? Assistant to someone important. Administrative assistant, I corrected, refusing to take the bait. And yes, still there. I got a small promotion last month, actually. How nice for you, he replied with manufactured enthusiasm. I just closed a 7-figure deal with Anderson Tech, Dad. Did I mention the bonus they're giving me? And just like that, the attention shifted away as my father clapped Derek on the shoulder. That's my boy, always aiming higher. My brother-in-law, Paul, was setting up his camera equipment near the large bay windows. He gave me a sympathetic nod as I passed. Paul had married into the family but never fully adopted their values, making him something of an outsider like me. Planning to get everyone's good side? Yes. Trying to, he replied quietly. Your dad wants a lot of footage of Derek talking about his career achievements. I've got the wireless mic set up around the main areas to capture natural conversations, too. Our assigned bedroom was the smallest in the house, tucked into the far corner with a view of the neighboring property rather than the lake. I helped Lily unpack, listening to her chatter about seeing her cousins, Derek's nieces and nephews from his wife's side of the family. Can I wear my blue swimsuit? And can I show everyone my new song? I practiced all week. My heart tightened. Lily's uninhibited enthusiasm was exactly what had been crushed out of me at her age. Of course you can sing, honey. Just remember that sometimes adults are talking, so find a good moment, okay? The first evening proceeded with the expected undercurrent of competition and comparison. My father dominated dinner conversation with questions about Derek's latest achievements, while my mother commented on everything from my hair. Don't you think it's time for a more professional cut? To my parenting. Lily seems very energetic. Don't you think some structure would be good for her? I noticed how Lily's cousins, aged 7 to 12, already mirrored the family hierarchy. They corrected her pronunciation, rolled their eyes when she spoke too loudly, and excluded her from their games with practiced politeness that adults might not notice, but children certainly feel. After dinner, while helping with dishes, my Aunt Linda approached me. Audrey, Derek mentioned you've been struggling since the divorce. We have a position opening in our company's mailroom if you're interested. I appreciate that, I said carefully. But I'm actually up for another promotion at Madison. I'm heading a small project team now. She patted my arm with disbelief. Well, the offer stands. Sometimes we need to be realistic about our capabilities. Later, as I tucked Lily into bed, I found her unusually quiet. Everything okay, sweetie? She traced patterns on the quilt. Cousin Emma said my singing was annoying. And Uncle Derek told me girls shouldn't be so loud if they want people to like them. I swallowed hard, recognizing the familiar patterns repeating themselves in a new generation. Lily, listen to me. Your voice is beautiful and you have every right to be heard. Some people just don't know how to appreciate enthusiasm. Grandpa said you were too loud as a kid too. And that's why you always got in trouble. I forced myself to breathe through the anger. Well, sometimes adults are wrong, even grandparents. Especially your mom's parents. She giggled at that and I kissed her forehead. Tomorrow will be better. We'll go swimming and have fun, just us. But as I lay awake in the unfamiliar bed, listening to the muffled laughter of my parents and brother still drinking downstairs, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had made a terrible mistake bringing Lily here. Some environments are toxic no matter how much time has passed, and the Thompson family lake house was proving to be exactly that. Morning arrived with brilliant sunshine streaming through the thin curtains of our room. Lily woke with her usual enthusiasm, the previous day's hurts apparently forgotten in the promise of lake swimming and breakfast waffles. Mom, wake up. Uncle Paul said they're making a special breakfast in the big room. She bounced on the edge of my bed, already dressed in her favorite blue sundress with yellow butterflies. Check my phone. 8:17 a.m. I had hoped to sleep longer after a restless night, but Lily's excitement was contagious. Okay, I'm up. Let me get dressed and we'll go down together. The big room was what my parents pretentiously called the Great Hall, a cavernous space with vaulted ceilings and a wall of windows overlooking the lake. It doubled as dining room and gathering space with excellent acoustics that amplified every sound. By the time Lily and I arrived, most of the family was already assembled. My father presided at the head of the massive oak table, newspaper in hand. My mother supervised the catering staff they'd hired for the weekend. Heaven forbid she actually cook for her family. Derek and Natalie sat with my father, engaged in what appeared to be a serious conversation about property investments. Good morning, I offered to the room generally, receiving distracted nods in return. Audrey, coffee's on the sideboard, my mother said. "Lily, the children are eating at the small table by the window." I noticed Paul adjusting microphones discreetly around the room, preparing for another day of documentary filming. He gave me a small wave as I poured coffee, getting all the family drama on tape. I asked quietly, "Your dad wants authentic family interactions," he replied with a meaningful look. "For posterity." The breakfast proceeded without incident at first. Lily joined her cousins, trying valiantly to enter their conversations while being subtly excluded. I sat with my Aunt Linda and her husband, making polite small talk about the weather and local property values. About 30 minutes into breakfast, the children finished eating and moved to the play area at the far end of the Great Hall. The adults remained at the table, conversation growing louder as mimosas were refilled. I kept one eye on Lily, who had taken to singing softly to herself while coloring in a book I'd packed. Gradually, her singing grew more confident. It was a song from her favorite cartoon, something about friendship and adventures. Her sweet voice carried in the acoustically designed room, occasionally rising above the adult conversation. I noticed Derek's jaw tightening each time Lily hit a high note. He shot several pointed looks in my direction, which I pretended not to see. My nieces and nephews had abandoned Lily to play a board game, excluding her with practiced casualness. "Audrey," my mother called from across the table, "don't you think Lily is being a bit disruptive?" Before I could answer, Lily's voice soared into the chorus of her song, completely unaware of the tension her joyful noise was creating. "For God's sake," Derek muttered loud enough for nearby conversations to pause. "Can't you control your child for 5 minutes?" I began to stand, intending to quietly ask Lily to lower her volume when everything happened at once. Derek pushed back from the table abruptly, his chair scraping loudly against the hardwood floor. He strode toward the children's area with purpose in his step. I moved to intercept him, but my aunt asked me a question that delayed me just seconds. Seconds that changed everything. Derek reached Lily, who looked up at her uncle with an innocent smile that quickly transformed into shock as his hand connected with her cheek in a slap that echoed through the suddenly silent room. Time seemed to freeze. Lily's small body rocked backward from the force. Her coloring book fell to the floor. The red imprint of Derek's hand bloomed instantly on her pale cheek. "Like mother, like daughter. Both are useless," Derek said loudly, looking around the room as if expecting approval. "Can't even behave properly in public." My father's voice cut through my stunned paralysis. "Well, she needed to learn some shame," he said with a smirk. "Girls these days aren't taught proper manners." My mother's tinkling laugh followed. Audrey never did understand the value of a quiet presence. I finally unfroze, rushing to Lily, who had begun to sob, her small body shaking with the shock and pain and humiliation. As I gathered her into my arms, the enormity of what had just happened crashed over me. "What is wrong with you?" I hissed at Derek, who stood watching with his arms crossed. "She's 6 years old. She's old enough to learn that the world doesn't revolve around her noise," he replied coldly. "Maybe if someone had taught you that lesson, you wouldn't be a divorced secretary raising a brat alone." "Administrative assistant," I corrected automatically, my voice shaking with rage and shock. "And she's not a brat. She's a child who is singing." My father folded his newspaper precisely. "Audrey, you're overreacting as usual. A little discipline never hurt anyone. Look how well Derek turned out compared to how you coddled that girl." The room had divided into distinct camps, those openly agreeing with Derek, those uncomfortable but silent, and Paul, who I suddenly noticed was standing very still by his equipment, his face pale. The documentary microphones were on, recording everything. Through my fury and my daughter's tears, I realized we had irrefutable evidence of what had just happened. Derek must have realized it too, because his eyes darted to Paul and the recording equipment. "You know what?" I said, standing with Lily in my arms, her face buried against my shoulder. "We're done here. Nobody touches my daughter. Nobody." "Oh, stop with the dramatics," my mother said dismissively. "It was hardly a tap. You're embarrassing yourself. I'm embarrassing myself. I laughed incredulously. My brother just assaulted a 6-year-old for singing, and I'm the embarrassment? Derek stepped toward me menacingly. Watch your mouth, Audrey. It was discipline, not assault. Something you clearly know nothing about. I backed away, holding Lily tighter. Stay away from us. We're leaving. Running away again. Derek called after me as I headed for the stairs. That's all you've ever been good at. I didn't respond, focusing instead on getting Lily somewhere safe. As we reached our room, I could hear the murmur of conversation resuming below. My family already moving on from what they considered a minor incident rather than the unforgivable act it was. What they didn't know is that everything had changed. The rules of engagement had shifted permanently. My brother had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. And thanks to my father's obsession with documenting the family legacy, I had proof. In our small bedroom, I gently placed Lily on the bed. Her crying had subsided to hiccuping sobs, but the red handprint on her cheek remained vivid against her pale skin. I took a washcloth from the bathroom, ran it under cold water, and carefully pressed it to her face. It hurts, Mommy, she whimpered. Why did Uncle Derek hit me? Was I bad? The question shattered something inside me. No, baby. You were not bad. Not at all. Uncle Derek was wrong to hit you. Very, very wrong. But Grandpa said. Grandpa was wrong too, I said firmly, gathering her close. Nobody should ever hit you. Especially not for singing. Your voice is beautiful. As Lily gradually calmed down, I began packing our bags with shaking hands. We needed to leave immediately. I had no doubt that if we stayed, my family would gaslight us both, minimizing what happened until Lily herself began to question her memories and feelings. A soft knock at the door made me tense. Who is it? I called, positioning myself between the door and Lily. It's Paul, came the quiet reply. Can I talk to you for a minute? Alone. I hesitated, then opened the door slightly. Now isn't a good time. Paul's face was drawn with concern. I know. Listen, I got everything on tape. The slap, what Derek said, your dad's comments, all of it. He lowered his voice further. I can make you a copy before they realize and make me delete it. Cold clarity washed over me. You'd do that? He nodded. What Derek did was assault, plain and simple. And the others? He shook his head in disgust. I married into this family, but I've never seen anything like that. Linda doesn't know I'm talking to you. Thank you, I whispered. We're leaving as soon as I finish packing. Meet me by my car in 20 minutes. I'll download a copy of the audio to a USB drive for you. After he left, I called Tara. She answered on the second ring. How's the family reunion from hell? She asked cheerfully. Derek hit Lily, I said, my voice breaking. Slapped her across the face for singing too loudly. And my parents laughed. He what? Tara's outrage exploded through the phone. Tell me you're leaving right now. Packing as we speak. Come straight to my house, she insisted. Don't go home in case they try to follow you. By the time I ended the call, Lily had fallen asleep, exhausted from crying. I finished packing quickly, then gently woke her. We're going to visit Aunt Tara, I explained, using her honorary title. We need to leave quietly, okay? She nodded, still subdued in a way that broke my heart. As we made our way downstairs with our bags, my mother intercepted us in the foyer. Where do you think you're going? She demanded. Home, I replied flatly. Or did you think we'd stay after Derek assaulted my daughter? Don't be ridiculous. It was hardly a tap. You're overreacting as usual. A tap doesn't leave a handprint, I said, shifting so she could see Lily's face, where the mark was still visible despite the cold compress. For a moment, something like doubt flickered in my mother's eyes, but she quickly recovered. Children bruise easily. You're making a scene over nothing. Nothing. I laughed bitterly. Would it be nothing if someone slapped you for talking during breakfast? Or if I slapped Derek for being condescending? That's different, she insisted. Adults don't need discipline. Neither do children, I countered. They need guidance and respect, not violence. My father appeared behind her. Audrey, you're being hysterical. Sit down, have a drink, and we can discuss this rationally. There's nothing to discuss, I said, moving toward the door. We're leaving. If you walk out that door, my father warned, don't expect any more financial help. No more bailing you out when you can't make rent. The threat hung in the air, meant to remind me of my precarious financial situation and dependence on their occasional assistance. In the past, it might have worked. Not today. Keep your money, I said calmly. It's not worth this. As I guided Lily toward the door, Derek appeared from the living room, tumbler of whiskey in hand despite the early hour. Running away as usual, little sister? Can't face the consequences of your poor parenting. I stopped, looking him directly in the eyes. The only consequence I'm avoiding is allowing my daughter to think it's normal for men to hit children. Enjoy your perfect life, Derek. I hope it was worth showing everyone who you really are. His face darkened. Is that a threat? No, I replied, opening the front door. Just an observation. As promised, Paul was waiting beside his car in the side driveway, partially hidden from the house by a stand of pines. He pressed a small USB drive into my hand. The audio is clear as day, he said quietly. Derek's slap, his comment about you both being useless, your dad saying she needed to learn shame, your mom laughing, it's all there. I'd be careful how you use it, though. They'll know it came from me. Thank you, I whispered. I won't implicate you unless I absolutely have to. The drive to Tara's apartment was silent, Lily dozing in her booster seat while I processed what had happened and what I needed to do next. By the time we arrived, a plan was forming in my mind. Tara met us at the door, enveloping first Lily and then me in fierce hugs. I made up the guest room for you both, she said. Stay as long as you need. That evening, after Lily was asleep in the unfamiliar bed, Tara and I sat at her kitchen table with a USB drive and her laptop. Are you sure you want to hear this again? She asked as I inserted the drive. I need to know exactly what was said, I replied. And I need a witness who isn't family. The recording was worse than I remembered. The casual cruelty in Derek's voice as he called us useless, the satisfied smirk audible in my father's comment about shame, my mother's tinkling laugh. All of it painted a picture of people who saw nothing wrong with hitting a child. Jesus, Tara whispered when it finished playing. I knew your family was toxic, but this... I know, I said, my resolve hardening. The question is, what do I do about it? You could go to the police, she suggested. That's assault on a minor, plain and simple. I could, I agreed. But you know how these things work. It would be my word against theirs without this recording, which might not even be admissible. And they'd paint me as the unstable single mother trying to extort money from successful relatives. So what then? Let them get away with it. I shook my head slowly. No, Derek crossed a line today, and there have to be consequences. Real ones. Over the next few days, while Lily and I adjusted to temporary life at Tara's, I began researching. First, I took Lily to her pediatrician, Dr. Winters, who documented the fading bruise and referred us to a child psychologist. She's experiencing some trauma responses, Dr. Winters explained gently. Nightmares, clinginess, fear of male authority figures. The psychologist will help her process what happened. Next, I consulted Lisa, a lawyer friend from college, bringing the audio recording with me. This is pretty damning, she said after listening. In terms of criminal charges, it could go either way. A good lawyer would argue it was a one-time disciplinary action, not abuse. But civil action, that's another story. I'm not interested in suing my brother for money, I clarified. I understand, Lisa nodded. But you should know your options. And you should know that this recording would be extremely damaging to someone with a public reputation to protect. That comment sparked an idea. Derek's position at Meridian Financial came with a strict morality clause, something he had bragged about at previous family gatherings. explaining how executives were held to high ethical standards because they handled sensitive client information. What if the goal isn't a lawsuit? Asked slowly. What if it's accountability? That night, I began researching Derek's professional life more thoroughly. His company bio touted his community involvement, including serving on the board of a children's charity and mentoring youth in business programs. The irony was almost too perfect. I created a detailed plan, weighing each potential action against both its effectiveness and its consequences for Lily. This wasn't about revenge. It was about protection and justice. It was about ensuring Derek understood that actions have consequences, especially when those actions hurt a child. The decisive moment came 3 days after we'd left the lake house, when Lily woke screaming from a nightmare. "Uncle Derek was chasing me," she sobbed into my shoulder. "He wanted to hit me again because I was singing." As I held my daughter, soothing her back to sleep with promises of safety, my decision crystallized. Derek had robbed Lily of her sense of security and her joy in singing, the thing that had brought her such happiness. He had made her feel ashamed of her voice, just as my parents had done to me throughout my childhood. The cycle needed to end, not just for Lily, but for any other child who might experience Derek's discipline in the future. The next morning I set my plan in motion. My plan began with documentation. I scheduled an appointment with Dr. Melissa Garner, the child psychologist Dr. Winters had recommended. She specialized in childhood trauma and had experience testifying in abuse cases. "Lily is showing classic signs of an acute stress response," Dr. Garner explained after their initial session. "She's experiencing anxiety around male authority figures, sleep disturbances, and reluctance to engage in activities she previously enjoyed, particularly singing." "Will she be okay?" I asked, the weight of maternal worry pressing on my chest. "Children are remarkably resilient with proper support," she assured me. "But what happened to her was significant trauma, not a minor discipline incident, as your family seems to believe. I'd like to see her weekly for a while." Dr. Garner provided a written assessment documenting Lily's symptoms and their cause. This became the first piece of evidence in my growing file. Next came the police report. The officer who took my statement was compassionate but realistic. Without visible injuries or independent witnesses, this would typically be hard to pursue, Officer Jenkins explained. Family discipline falls into a gray area legally. But with the audio recording. She paused, having just listened to the evidence. That changes things. This report establishes a formal record of the incident, which could be important later. My phone had been buzzing constantly with messages from family members. My mother's texts oscillated between guilt-tripping, "You're breaking your father's heart with this drama," and minimizing, "It was just a little slap. For heaven's sake." Derek had progressed from dismissive, "Get over yourself," to threatening, "You'll regret making a big deal out of this." I responded to none of them. Instead, I created a carefully edited version of the audio recording, not manipulated, but trimmed to include only the critical moments. Derek's slap. The sound was unmistakable. His useless comment. My father's statement about Lily needing to learn some shame. And my mother's laughter. I added no commentary, letting their actions and words speak for themselves. Then I took a deep breath and sent this edited clip, along with a factual, unemotional account of what happened, to 3 strategic recipients. First, to the board of directors at Meridian Financial, where Derek served as vice president. Second, to the leadership of the Children's Future Foundation, where Derek sat on the board of directors. Third, to the organizers of the Westlake Business Leaders Mentorship Program, where Derek regularly worked with high school students. Each message was professional and restrained, explaining that I felt ethically obligated to share this information given Derek's positions of influence with children and in the community. I requested confidentiality regarding my identity as the source, citing concerns for my daughter's privacy. "Are you sure about this?" Tara asked as I hovered over the send button on the final email. "There's no going back." "I'm sure," I replied, thinking of Lily's tearful question. "Was I bad?" No child should ever question their worth because an adult couldn't control their temper. Derek made his choice when he slapped a 6-year-old for singing. These are simply the consequences. Within hours, my phone exploded with notifications. Derek had discovered what I'd done. I suspect one of the board members contacted him immediately. His messages turned from threatening to panicked. "What have you done?" The board called an emergency meeting. "They're talking about suspending me pending investigation. You need to tell them this is a family misunderstanding right now." My parents joined the barrage. My father's messages, coldly furious. "You've betrayed this family for attention." My mother's, increasingly desperate. "Please call us. We can fix this together." I blocked them all. Paul called that evening, his voice hushed. "Derek is losing his mind at your parents' house. They know I recorded everything, but they don't know I gave you a copy. Derek's threatening to sue you for defamation." "Let him try," I replied calmly. Truth is an absolute defense against defamation. All I did was share his actual words and actions with people who should know about them. "Your parents are saying you're unstable, that you've always been jealous of Derek. They're trying to convince everyone this is about the divorce and money." I laughed without humor. "Of course they are. It's easier than admitting their golden child hit a kindergartner for singing too loudly." The next morning brought an unexpected call from a number I didn't recognize. It was Natalie, Derek's wife. "Audrey," her voice sounded strained. "Can we meet somewhere private?" We arranged to meet at a coffee shop halfway between our homes. When Natalie arrived, I was shocked by her appearance. Always meticulously put together, she now looked exhausted, with dark circles under red-rimmed eyes. "I heard the recording," she said without preamble, sliding into the booth across from me. "Paul played it for Linda and she called me." I waited, unsure where this conversation was heading. "I need to know if..." She hesitated, twisting her wedding ring. "Was this the first time Derek has done something like this to Lily?" "Yes," I confirmed. "But his temper has always been there, just usually directed at me." She nodded slowly. "He has a temper at home too. Never physical before, but..." She looked down at her coffee. "The way he spoke to Lily, the things he said about you both being useless. I've heard that tone before. Directed at me." Something shifted in my understanding. "Natalie, are you okay?" Her eyes filled with tears. "I don't know anymore. When everything started happening with his job and the charity board, he threw a glass across the kitchen, said it was my fault for not defending him to my father, who's friends with one of the Meridian directors." I reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "I'm sorry. I never wanted to hurt you." "You didn't," she said firmly. "Derek did this. And maybe I needed to see who he really is." She straightened her shoulders. "I told him I'm staying with my sister for a while. He needs to get help for his anger." As Natalie and I parted ways, a text came through from Grace, my supervisor at Madison Marketing. "Just got a strange call from someone named Derek Thompson, asking questions about your employment. Said he was a potential reference." I didn't share any information. "Is everything okay?" My brother was clearly attempting damage control by digging into my life for counter-ammunition. I explained the situation briefly to Grace, including sending her the audio clip as a precaution against any further contact from my family. Her response was immediate and supportive. "That's horrific. Take whatever time you need for your daughter. Your job is secure, and if they contact anyone here again, we'll handle it appropriately." The professional consequences for Derek mounted quickly. By the end of the week, Meridian Financial had placed him on administrative leave pending an internal investigation. The children's charity removed him from their board effective immediately, citing their zero-tolerance policy regarding child welfare. The mentorship program mutually agreed to pause his involvement. Community response was equally swift once the story began circulating. Parents from Lily's school, neighbors, and even distant acquaintances reached out with messages of support. Many shared their own stories of family abuse minimized as discipline. A small community of survivors formed around us, offering both practical help and emotional solidarity. Derek attempted to control the narrative through mutual connections, claiming I had manipulated the recording and was using Lily as a pawn in a family disagreement about money. Few believed him once they heard the unedited audio. My phone rang again, this time my brother-in-law Paul. "I just wanted you to know," he said quietly. "Several other family members have approached me privately to say they witnessed Derek being physically aggressive with his nieces and nephews before. They were too afraid of your parents' reaction to speak up, but they're supporting you now." The revelation that Derek's behavior might have affected other children in the family strengthened my resolve. This wasn't just about Lily anymore. It was about breaking a pattern of abuse disguised as discipline that had potentially harmed multiple children and would have harmed more if left unchecked. As the consequences of his actions became increasingly public, Derek's attempts to contact me grew more desperate. He vacillated between rage and manipulation, threats, and pleas for family loyalty. I maintained my silence, focusing instead on Lily's healing and our path forward. The foundation had been laid. The truth was in the open, documented and undeniable. What happened next would depend on how Derek and my parents chose to respond to that truth, and whether they could finally acknowledge the harm they had caused. By the third week after the incident, the consequences of Derek's actions had rippled through both his professional and personal life. Meridian Financial's investigation concluded with his demotion from vice president to a non-client-facing role, a significant step down in both status and compensation. The children's charity had permanently removed him from their board. Most painfully for his ego, the story had circulated among his prestigious social circle, resulting in uncomfortable questions and cancelled dinner invitations. I learned most of this through Paul, who had become an unexpected ally. "Your parents are in damage control mode," he reported during one of our calls. "They're telling everyone you've always been unstable and jealous of Derek's success." "That's not surprising," I replied, having anticipated this reaction. "They've been using that narrative my entire life." What I hadn't anticipated was the family division that emerged. My mother's sister, Catherine, called me directly, her normally reserved voice tight with emotion. "I saw Derek slap your little girl," she admitted. "I was across the room and didn't intervene. I've been ashamed of my silence ever since." "Why are you telling me this now?" "Yes. Because your parents are asking the family to present a united front against you, claiming you're exaggerating what happened. I can't be part of that lie. What Derek did was wrong, and their reaction was worse." Catherine wasn't alone. Gradually, other relatives reached out, some offering support, others simply acknowledging they had witnessed the incident and confirming my account. The family was fracturing along moral lines rather than blood ties. Meanwhile, Lily was making progress with Dr. Garner. The nightmares had decreased, though she still grew anxious around loud male voices. Most encouragingly, she had started singing again, quietly at first, then with growing confidence as I consistently reinforced that her voice was beautiful and welcome in our home. For weeks after the incident, my grandmother Martha, my father's mother and the family matriarch, summoned everyone to her home. "This has gone far enough," she declared on the phone. "I want both sides of the story. And I want the family to make peace." "There aren't two sides to hitting a child, Grandma," I replied. "Perhaps not," she conceded, surprising me. "But there needs to be a resolution. Sunday at 2 o'clock. I expect you to be there." I consulted with Dr. Garner about whether to bring Lily to this family meeting. Her advice was clear. Absolutely not. This is adult business now, and she shouldn't be exposed to potential conflict or be asked to relive her trauma. Tara agreed to watch Lily while I attended the meeting alone. As I drove to my grandmother's sprawling Victorian home, anxiety knotted my stomach. I hadn't seen my parents or Derek since the lake house. How would they behave now that their golden child had faced actual consequences for his actions? The tension in my grandmother's formal living room was thick enough to cut with a knife. My parents sat stiffly on the antique sofa, my mother's face a mask of composure that couldn't quite hide her fury. Derek and Natalie sat separately. She in an armchair by the window, he leaning against the mantelpiece, eyes bloodshot. Various aunts, uncles, and adult cousins filled the remaining seats, their usual chatter conspicuously absent. My grandmother entered last, leaning on her cane but radiating authority at 87. "I've lived long enough to see 5 generations of this family," she began without preamble, "and I've never been more disappointed than I am today." My father straightened. "Mother, if you'd just listen to our side." "Howard, I may be old, but I'm not senile," she cut him off sharply. "Paul was good enough to share the recording with me. I heard exactly what happened." The room fell silent. My grandmother turned to Derek. "You struck a child, a 6-year-old, for singing. Then you insulted both her and her mother. Your behavior was inexcusable." Derek's face flushed. "It wasn't that hard a slap. Everyone's overreacting." "Be quiet," grandmother snapped. "When a grown man hits a child, the force is irrelevant. It's the breach of trust, the abuse of power." She turned to my parents. "And you two encouraged it, laughed at it, dismissed it." My mother's composure cracked. "Martha, you don't understand. Audrey has always been difficult, always exaggerating." "Eleanor," my grandmother interrupted, "I raised your husband. I know exactly where Derek learned this behavior." Her gaze shifted to my father, whose face had gone pale. "Howard was disciplined harshly by his father." "Too harshly." "I regret every day that I didn't stop it. I won't make that mistake again." A heavy silence fell over the room. My father stared at his hands. "Audrey," my grandmother continued, "you did what I should have done decades ago. You protected your child, even at great personal cost. For that, you have my respect." I hadn't expected this alliance and found myself momentarily speechless. "That said," she continued, "this family now stands at a crossroads. Healing is possible, but only with accountability." Derek pushed away from the mantelpiece. "Accountability. I've been publicly humiliated, demoted at work, kicked off the charity board I helped build. Isn't that enough punishment for one slap?" Found my voice at last. "This isn't about punishment, Derek. It's about acknowledging what you did and its impact. Lily has nightmares." She stopped singing, the thing that brought her joy. "She asked me if she was bad." My voice broke. A 6-year-old child thought she deserved to be hit because the adults she trusted made her believe she was wrong for using her voice. "I didn't mean," Derek began, then stopped, seeming genuinely at a loss. "That's just it," I continued. "You didn't mean to traumatize her. You just meant to control her. To make her small and quiet, the way this family has always tried to control and diminish me. But intentions don't erase impact." My father stood abruptly. "This is ridiculous. We've indulged this drama long enough. Derek made a mistake, yes, but Audrey deliberately destroyed his reputation out of spite." "No, Howard," my grandmother said firmly. "Audrey showed people who Derek really is. He destroyed his own reputation through his actions." "I can't believe you're taking her side," my mother exclaimed. "I'm taking the side of that child," grandmother replied. "As should you all." The confrontation escalated from there. Years of resentment and dysfunction poured out as family members finally spoke their truths. Aunt Catherine described witnessing my father's harsh discipline of me as a child, while Derek received only gentle guidance. Cousin Jennifer revealed that Derek had once twisted her son's arm at a previous reunion for talking back. Uncle Robert admitted he'd seen Derek shove a business associate during a golf game, but had said nothing because that's just how men handle disagreements. A pattern emerged, one of Derek's unchecked aggression and my parents' consistent enabling of his behavior. With each revelation, Derek's face grew darker, while my parents' denials became less convincing. Natalie finally spoke, her voice quiet but steady. "I'm filing for separation." The room fell silent again. "What?" Derek turned to her, genuinely shocked. "This incident forced me to acknowledge things I've been ignoring for years," she continued. "The way you speak to me when you're angry, the things you throw, The fear I feel when I hear your car in the driveway after you've been drinking." "I've never hit you," Derek protested. "No," she agreed. "But hearing how you spoke to Lily and Audrey, seeing how your parents minimized it, I suddenly understood where our relationship was heading." My mother made a last attempt to salvage the situation. "Natalie, every marriage has rough patches. You can't throw away years together over one regrettable incident." "It's not one incident," Natalie replied. "It's a pattern, and I won't wait until it escalates further." The meeting continued for nearly 3 hours. By the end, several things had become clear. The family would never be the same. Lines had been drawn based on values rather than blood. Derek had lost far more than a professional title. He had lost the unwavering support system that had protected him from consequences his entire life. My parents faced a choice: acknowledge their role in enabling toxic behavior or lose relationships with multiple family members, including their only granddaughter. As the gathering broke up, my grandmother took my hand. "It will take time," she said softly. "Change doesn't happen overnight, especially in families with such entrenched patterns. But it started, and that's something." In the weeks that followed, the consequences continued to unfold. Derek's company issued a public statement about their commitment to family values and ethical conduct, implicitly distancing themselves from him without naming him directly. He was required to attend anger management therapy as a condition of continued employment. Natalie moved out of their home and filed official separation papers, the first step toward divorce. In a coffee meeting that left us both in tears, she confided that she had miscarried twice during their marriage and now wondered if the stress of walking on eggshells around Derek's temper had contributed. My parents made halting, awkward attempts at reconciliation, clearly motivated more by damage control than genuine remorse. My mother called with an invitation to dinner that included no acknowledgement of what had happened. My father sent an email that characterized the whole situation as a misunderstanding blown out of proportion. I maintained firm boundaries, making it clear that any relationship moving forward would require acknowledgement of the harm done to Lily and concrete steps to ensure her safety and emotional well-being in their presence. The most profound changes, however, happened within me. The woman who had once accepted mistreatment as her due now stood firmly in her power. The mother who had brought her child into a toxic environment in hopes of family connection now recognized that true family is defined by love and respect, not blood and obligation. 6 months after the incident, I sat in Dr. Garner's office for a progress update on Lily's therapy. "She's doing remarkably well," the psychologist shared. "Children are resilient, especially when they have a secure attachment to a protective caregiver." "You've done everything right, Audrey." "I didn't protect her from the initial trauma," I pointed out, the familiar guilt surfacing. "But you responded perfectly afterward," Dr. Garner countered. "You validated her feelings, removed her from danger, got her appropriate support, and held the perpetrator accountable. That's why she's healing." As I drove home, I reflected on the unexpected gifts that had emerged from this painful chapter. A stronger, more confident voice, healthier boundaries, the knowledge that I could protect my daughter even against powerful opposition, and, perhaps most surprisingly, authentic connections with family members who shared my values rather than simply my DNA. The path forward remained complicated. Healing would take time for all involved. But for the first time in my life, I was walking that path on my own terms, with my head held high and my daughter's hand firmly in mine. 6 months after Derek slapped Lily at the lake house, our lives had transformed in ways I never could have imagined. Our small apartment, once a symbol of my post-divorce financial struggles, had become a true sanctuary, filled with laughter, music, and most importantly, safety. Lily's recovery continued to amaze me. Dr. Garner had reduced our sessions to monthly check-ins, noting that Lily's resilience was remarkable. "She's singing again," I shared during our last appointment, emotion tightening my throat. "Not just at home, but she joined the children's choir at the community center." "That's significant progress," Dr. Garner smiled. "It means she no longer associates her voice with punishment or shame." The incident had created ripples that extended far beyond our immediate family. Derek had been required to complete anger management therapy as a condition of his continued employment. Though his career trajectory had been permanently altered, the once golden child now occupied a back-office position with little client contact. His marriage had not survived the scrutiny that followed his actions. Natalie filed for divorce 3 months after their separation, citing irreconcilable differences publicly, but sharing with me privately that the incident with Lily had forced her to acknowledge the emotional abuse she had normalized in their relationship. "I keep thinking about what might have happened if we'd had children," she confided during one of our now regular lunch meetings. "Would I have recognized it then? Or would I have enabled him the way your parents did?" My relationship with my parents remained complicated. After multiple attempts at rug sweeping failed, they had grudgingly agreed to family counseling. Our first session had been tense, with my father attempting to control the narrative and my mother alternating between tears and passive-aggressive comments about family loyalty. "Reconciliation requires accountability," the family therapist had stated firmly. "And accountability begins with acknowledging harm." It took 3 sessions before my father admitted, with visible difficulty, "I should have stopped Derek instead of encouraging him. What he did to Lily was wrong." My mother took longer, struggling to relinquish her role as family peacekeeper and enabler. "I just wanted everyone to get along," she explained tearfully in our 5th session. "I've always smoothed things over. That's what mothers do." "No," I countered gently. "Mothers protect their children, even when it's difficult, even when it disrupts the peace." Progress with my parents was measured in small steps. They had not yet earned the right to unsupervised time with Lily, but we had established a schedule of brief, structured visits that took place in neutral locations. During these meetings, I observed subtle changes. My father making efforts to engage with Lily on her terms rather than imposing his expectations, my mother catching herself before making critical comments. The family division that emerged after the confrontation at my grandmother's house had initially been painful but ultimately proved healing. Relatives who had witnessed generations of toxic behavior finally spoke their truths, creating authentic connections based on shared values rather than obligatory blood ties. My grandmother, at 87, had become an unexpected ally and advocate. "I made mistakes with your father," she acknowledged during one of our weekly tea visits. "I saw the signs but told myself that's just how men were in those days. By the time I recognized the damage, the patterns were set." Her candor helped me understand the generational nature of our family dysfunction without excusing it. More importantly, it strengthened my resolve to ensure these patterns ended with me. My career had taken a surprising turn as well. The confidence I found in standing up for Lily translated to my professional life. When a project management position opened at Madison Marketing, I applied despite believing it was beyond my qualifications. To my shock, I got the job. "Your handling of the crisis with your daughter showed exceptional leadership qualities," Grace explained during my promotion interview. "You were strategic, maintained clear communication under pressure, and demonstrated remarkable integrity. Those are exactly the skills we need in this role." The increased salary meant we no longer needed financial assistance from my parents, removing the last lever of control they had held over my life. Perhaps the most unexpected development came through a support group I joined for parents navigating family trauma. Sharing my experience led others to disclose similar stories, creating a community of mutual support and understanding. With encouragement from the group facilitator, I began speaking at local parenting workshops about recognizing and addressing family toxicity. "Your story resonates because it's about more than one incident," the facilitator explained. "It's about breaking generational patterns and choosing your child's well-being over family expectations. That's something many people struggle with." One crisp autumn morning, exactly 7 months after the lake house incident, we held a small gathering at our apartment, what Lily called our chosen family celebration. Tara was there, along with Paul and his children. He and Linda had separated, another casualty of the family reckoning. Natalie came with her sister. A few colleagues from work joined us, as did several members of our support group. Most surprisingly, My grandmother arrived with a hesitant-looking Eleanor in tow. My mother had asked to come. Her first independent overture since everything happened. As everyone mingled in our modest living room, Lily tugged at my sleeve. "Mom, can I sing the song now?" she whispered. "Are you sure you want to?" I asked, knowing what this meant to her. She nodded determinedly. "I've been practicing with Ms. Joanna at choir." I called for everyone's attention as Lily took her position by the window, sunlight illuminating her face. The room fell silent as she began to sing. Not the cartoon theme song that had triggered Derek's violence, but a simple children's ballad about courage and finding your voice. Her clear, sweet voice filled our home without apology or fear. Watching her standing tall, eyes bright with confidence, I felt tears spring to my eyes. This was the true measure of our healing, not just surviving trauma, but reclaiming joy on the other side. When she finished, the room erupted in applause. My mother dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. "She has a beautiful voice," she said quietly. "I should have said something that day." "Yes, you should have," I agreed. "But what matters now is what we all say and do going forward." That evening, after our guests had departed and Lily was tucked into bed, I sat on our small balcony watching the sunset. The past 7 months had been the most challenging and transformative of my life. I had lost certain family connections but gained authentic ones. I had faced financial uncertainty but found professional growth. Most importantly, I had shown Lily that she was worth protecting at any cost. The journey wasn't over. There would be more difficult conversations, more boundaries to establish and maintain, more work to do in therapy for both of us. But for the first time in my life, I faced the future without the shadow of family toxicity darkening my path. Derek's slap had been meant to silence a child. Instead, it had given voice to generations of suppressed truths. In trying to make Lily small, he had inadvertently helped me discover just how strong I could be. As mothers, we cannot always prevent our children from experiencing pain, but we can show them how to respond to it with dignity and courage. We can demonstrate that true strength lies not in dominating others, but in standing firmly in our own truth, even when we stand alone. My brother slapped my daughter for being too loud. My parents laughed. And in that terrible moment, they taught me the most valuable lesson of my life: that some family ties need to be severed for healing to begin, while others can be rewoven into something stronger and more beautiful than before. Have you ever had to choose between family expectations and protecting someone vulnerable? What would you have done in my situation? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe for more stories about finding strength in difficult circumstances. Remember that you deserve to be heard, to take up space, and to use your voice without shame, just like Lily finally learned to do. Thank you for listening to our journey.